What's up guys, thanks again for coming back to my channel. As you may remember, I said in my last video that I had some new ideas for videos that I wanted to try out soon. This was actually not one of them. I, no joke, thought about this like this morning at the time that I'm recording this. It just kind of all happened spontaneously, so now I'm doing this. As you see by the title, this is basically just catching you guys up on things that I've watched and things that I've listened to from January through May. I don't have time to review all this stuff because I do, believe it or not, have a life and I have a job, so I have other priorities and things to do. So in this video, I'll be talking about albums that I've listened to, movies that I've watched, as well as TV shows. I don't ever plan to do any reviews for TV just because one, I don't think I would have much to say, and two, I'm just not really confident in my ability to review a TV show, really. I mean, it's a whole different ballpark compared to movies, and I don't think I'm really equipped to do something like that. So I think just a little short review like this and these kinds of videos will do well for that. I'm not gonna do any kind of grades for them. I'm just gonna give you my quick thoughts on what I think about them. Like, I mean, they'll probably only be like 30 seconds to a minute or so. Very kind of rapid pace because I got a lot of stuff to talk about here. There's a lot of stuff that I watched and listened to, so yeah, I won't take too long, I won't be too detailed, I just want to be quick and precise on each one. So I'm gonna start this now. I'm gonna do it from albums first and go in order from the release date. So the first album I'm gonna talk about is this album by an artist called Billy Cobb. He has a YouTube channel, and this album was just called his name, Billy Cobb. I'm not too familiar with his work. I mainly know his YouTube videos. I like his channel though. I think he makes some good content. And this album had a kind of a cool fusion of punk and lo-fi and alt-rock, indie as well. I know he plays guitar. I don't know if he does any of the other things. Having said that, it was kind of short and I don't really remember a lot of it, to be quite honest, but I do remember enjoying it and being pleased with it overall. Okay Human, this was an album by Weezer. It came out in January, and this was a surprise to say the least because Weezer over the past like 2 decades or so really haven't been that very critically acclaimed, but this album was quite good. They essentially just replaced all their guitars with strings. It's a really cool change for the band. It's kind of like a mix of Baroque pop and pop rock, but also has that alternative feel that we're familiar with Weezer. And yeah, just a lot of really good songs, and the instrumentals were all really nice. Just a very good, very well produced album. Zoom In, this is the newest EP from Ringo Starr, and I mean, it's no secret that Ringo is definitely like the worst songwriter out of all the Beatles. No offense, but I mean, I think everyone can agree on that. With the exception to the single leading up to this, which is called Here's to the Nights. I think that was actually a pretty decent song overall. The rest of the album sucks. It's just extremely bland and generic pop rock. I really haven't been a fan of Ringo's stuff ever since like the 70s, really. It's just really boring and not very interesting at all. It could be worse, but it could be a lot better, that's for sure. The Bitter Truth, the newest album by Evanescence. This could easily have come out in like 2004, 2003 or whatever. They're just going back to the basics, doing what they've always done, really. And it's okay. I'm not a huge fan of the band. I do like Emily's voice. I think she has a good voice. The main thing I've heard about them is that they're kind of just a rip-off of Linkin Park, and I would have to agree with that. Especially with this album, there are several songs that sound a lot like something that Linkin Park would have done back in the day. It has its highlights, but for the most part, just kind of a so-so album, but definitely much better than Zoom In. Typhoons by Roy Blood. I was super excited for this. I'm a big fan of this band. I really liked the first 2 singles that led up to this album's release. The last 2 I didn't care for as much, but they go in a more dance rock direction. Kind of similar to what Medicine at Midnight was like for the Foo Fighters. And what's really funny is that this album was produced by Josh Homme, who is the frontman for Queens of the Stone Age. And there were a couple songs on Medicine at Midnight that I thought sounded a lot like something that Queens of the Stone Age would have done. And this album as a whole does remind me a lot of Medicine at Midnight, so it's just interesting. I feel like those 3 bands have definitely been talking and they've been sharing some ideas together. There's been some collaborating for sure. Overall, kind of a disappointment. Not as good as I wanted it to be, but it was decent. Lastly is Butter Miracle Sweet One. This is the newest EP from Counting Crows. And like Weezer, this was a huge surprise. I don't know what's going on. All these 90s alt rock, pop rock bands are like coming out with some really good material. It was only 4 songs, but really all 4 songs were quite good. Adam Duritz, I think is his name, the lead singer, he still got a really good voice. The EP was just a really big breath of fresh air because so many of these bands that are this old, I just don't think are really putting out that great of material nowadays. So it's nice to see something from a band that's been around this long put out something this good. Now moving on to the movies section, I watched To All the Boys, Always and Forever. This is the 3rd movie in this series. I believe it's also the last one. And this movie was cute. You know, it's I still think the first one's easily the best one out of the trilogy. And you know, it does what it needs to do to close out a trilogy. I like all the characters, I like the acting overall, but it's extremely generic and predictable, and so that definitely takes away some points for me. But I mean, it's a fine movie. You can watch it and enjoy it. It's got some good acting and it's competently directed, so not bad, but just not anything I think I want to seek out again. Boss Level. This was also a big shock for me because this is basically the Groundhog Day kind of plot, you know, reliving the same day over and over again, which I feel like we've gotten so many of those kinds of movies lately. You know, last year you had Palm Springs. So going into this, I really didn't think it would be all that good, but I was wrong. I thought Frank Grillo gave a really good performance in this. There was a lot of really good action. The screenplay definitely could have used some work, I think, with the development of its characters. It was a really fun movie. It was fun getting to watch this character kind of figure out what's going on and how to basically just to get out of this thing that he's been stuck in, kind of just going on the journey with him. It was really cool. With the movie Nobody, we saw Bob Odenkirk basically become an action star, which was something I never thought I would say, and he does it well. He gives a great performance in this movie. He's easily, in my opinion, the best part of the movie. Not that the movie was bad. I really enjoyed this movie. I honestly thought this was like a spoof. When I saw the trailer, I thought it was going to be a spoof of like some kind of Taken or John Wick type of movie, but I mean, no, it's pretty serious for the most part, and they pulled it off really well, made a really fun movie out of it. Bad Trip was a movie released to Netflix sometime in March, and if you're not too familiar with Eric Andre's humor, I would suggest that you do get familiar with it before watching this because he's extremely edgy, extremely raunchy. Emphasis on the raunchy for sure. And basically this was kind of like a hidden camera prank movie, getting real reactions from real people, not actors. It actually had a surprising amount of like endearing and heartwarming moments to it. While I do find it like quite funny for the most part, there are definitely some scenes that are kind of pushing it for me, or a little too much and too over the top. But I think if you're into his humor, then you'll definitely like this for sure. Godzilla vs. Kong was a fun time in the cinema. It had some amazing CGI, some surprisingly not bad characters, because you know these movies and so many of these kinds of movies are kind of synonymous for having poorly written characters. But I mean, I didn't think they were that bad, and I thought that the acting was good overall. While there were definitely some dull moments, I found this to be overall just a good time at the movies, and I think most people will just have a lot of fun with this. I think this is a good transition to a movie that's completely the opposite, The Unholy. And this movie was just really boring. It was kind of actually laughable at times. Like sometimes it was just so dramatic and over the top that it just, like, I couldn't help but just kind of giggle at times, just how funny it was. I will say that the acting actually wasn't that bad. There were some decent performances. I overall didn't give a crap about the characters or the story. I didn't really find it scary at all. There were just a bunch of cheap jump scares. Just very, very boring, very uninteresting. There were people that walked out of the theater when I went to go see this. Concrete Cowboy was a movie that I thought was solid, but I saw a lot of potential for it to be a lot better. You had some really big names in the movie like Idris Elba or Caleb McLaughlin, and a cool premise with this cool lore of these concrete cowboys, which is actually kind of based on a true story in a way. And I feel like I could have used more with the writing for the characters, especially those 2 names that I listed, because they're a father and son in the movie. And I've always liked to see more done with that relationship, but overall this was a well-acted movie. It had an interesting premise to it. I just think it could have benefited from more time taken to writing the screenplay, and maybe even just more time given to the actual duration of the film. Demon Slayer, the movie, this is based off of a manga and as well as a TV series. I didn't actually know that, and every review that I've watched and read on the internet has said like you have to watch the TV show before watching this because you're not going to get it. Yeah, I think you definitely should. There was definitely some things that I was a little bit confused about, but I really liked the characters in this movie, especially the main three protagonists. I thought they were all really cool and very charismatic. There was some excellent animation in the film, some really heartwarming moments, especially towards the end. I just wish that I had seen the series before so I could appreciate this more. I did still like it, but I definitely got to get caught up on the Demon Slayer lore, I think, before I watched anything else related to this. Those Who Wish Me Dead, this was the most recent movie I saw in the theater, and it's kind of getting some mixed reviews right now, which I can't understand, but I think it's pretty good actually. Angelina Jolie was really good, and the movie definitely wanted to highlight her performance and her character. There were moments of the movie that had a lot of suspense and were very intense. Some good humor. It was well directed, had some really good cinematography to it. Nothing really mind-blowing, nothing that I think I'll ever want to watch again, maybe, but for what it was, I thought it was good and I thought it was well made. So now to talk about the TV shows I watched, as far as just new releases. Oh yeah, and I don't know if I said this, but I'm only talking about new releases, just stuff that's come out this year, that's it. But I only watched 2 seasons so far this year, and the first one is WandaVision, which is a mini-series as of now. I don't think there's another season confirmed yet, if there will be at all. I thought this was a really cool thing, easily one of the most unique things that Marvel's ever done. Honestly, before this, I really never gave a crap about Wanda and Vision's chemistry or like their romance at all. I just didn't really care for it that much. Other scenes in Infinity War were probably like my least favorite parts of the movie, but this show actually started to make me care for them and like them a lot. Elizabeth Olsen, Paul Bettany, they were fantastic in the show. The premise is just so interesting. As the show progresses and we get to see really what's going on under the surface, it gets really exciting. The finale, I think, could have been better. The first 2/3 of it were kind of just like the typical action thing that Marvel always does with their movies. But I think when it does actually end, the way it wraps up, they did a really good job with that, and it's definitely emotional, definitely a tearjerker for some people. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this just came out like 2 weeks after WandaVision finished, and in my opinion it's definitely a step down from WandaVision. While like WandaVision, I do like seeing more of Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I like seeing them get developed as characters, and their performances are great and everything. I just really didn't care for the overall premise of this season, especially with regards to the main villain or villains. See, I didn't even know like if there was like one primary antagonist. It was kind of confusing actually, but that part I definitely think could have been better. There was some cool action in the show and some really cool surprise guest actors and actresses in the show, which I'm sure you guys have probably heard about by now, but that was really cool and a big surprise. I just think I could have gotten more from the story. It just wasn't as satisfying as WandaVision for me. Alright, so that's everything. That's all of the new releases that I've caught you guys up on. Now, I know I started in February my channel, but I just thought I would do January because it's just 1 month, so you know, not that much more really to talk about. This is something I think I'll do every few months or so. Let me guys know what you think about this in the comments. Thanks again for watching the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.